Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Computer Wednesday, we're going to talk about Google versus India, the court battle that is going on right now. So let's dive right into it. So what's happening here? Well, you have to understand, India is realizing slowly that India is the world's largest democracy, and not to mention at this point in time, world's largest population also. And that's a very big deal. How big deal? Well, it simply means we have unsaturated growth market, meaning this market is growing and it has potential. Because yes, you might say China also has that, but no, because Chinese government will simply say no, you have to work according to us or we'll block you. Like Google will be blocked, YouTube will be blocked, and all that jazz. So you have to understand that. So as a market that is free and open and bound by the word of a law rather than word of a dictator, India is the largest market. And to give you a context, like how large India really is, like even Indians don't truly understand it. So this sort of maps help us to visualize. For example, USA is world's third largest populated country. India, China, USA. Now here's the deal. How small is USA compared to India? You take India, you slice off 1 billion, the remainder is still larger than what USA is. That's why, like, if you put it in India's map, it's inside India. You put Ethiopia, you put Russia, you put Philippines, you put United Kingdom, you put Mexico, you put Egypt, you put Italy, you put Spain. That's how large India is. It's idiotically huge. And not to mention, it's also surprisingly small surface area, as in like square kilometer coverage. It's tiny, and somehow we have that kind of population. So Indians government is slowly realizing that we have power. Like back in the days, we were always listening to others. We always were like, oh, what are you know? And again, we were a very young democracy. Now we are 75 years old, so we're kind of like getting a feel for it. So we are starting to throw our weight around, and you can see that effect in every company, be it Amazon, be it Google. All of them are literally focusing on India, as in like, okay, this is India. We have to monetize this puppy. So that's becoming a big deal. Now, in this time, thankfully, we do have a bureaucratic body that is designed to manage that situation, because be mindful, that's exactly how East India Company came in, like a business and all that jazz, and they destroyed the country. So Competition Commission of India is designed to manage this sort of thing, meaning if too much attention starts to come in, and they have to be like, hey, bro, anti-competitive behavior is not acceptable here. So because of India's weight, people can actually have to listen to it. So they did a probe on Google. Now, Google is a big deal. Whether you like it or not, it's a big deal, like a really, really big deal. It's like much bigger than Apple, especially in India. Now, many times people don't get it. It's like, if Indians are getting rich enough, then why the heck we have so few Apple? Well, here's the deal. Apple is not really good for product, and because India started from middle class to upper class, we went from Android to very expensive Android, meaning we have even expensive phones that are more expensive than iPhones. For example, Fold. So iPhone shows you mine's bigger. Google, basically Samsung Fold says mine is even bigger. So bank balance. So that's why more people in India will find Samsung Fold rather than iPhone, because that's the easiest way to show that mine's bigger than yours. So that's why Android is playing a very pivotal role in India, like truly pivotal. Like Apple is like, bro, it's just like some poor people buy it. I'm not even joking. Not even joking. That's the sentiment here. And that's why the percentage barely even touched like 3 to 4%. Like, it's bad. Again, it's like the timing lined up perfectly. If Fold would have launched like 2, 3 years later, Apple would have started to grow. But like, it come at the right time. People were becoming richer and they wanted something, and they coming from Android. So rather than jumping from Android to basically iOS, they are like, hey, and not to mention Mac is here almost zero. So people are like, you know what? Let's just jump into mine's bigger than yours. So Google is a very prime market here. So company had to look into it and be like, okay, what the heck they are doing? Are they doing right or they are doing wrong? The answer is it's bad. Like, they looked into it and it's like, bro, this is just wrong. That's how bad it is. So before we dive deep into it, we have to understand this has happened in the past, and not to mention we are all affected by it. So the biggest tech shakeup happened in the history. That happened during the era of Internet Explorer, as in like early 1990s. Now, it matters so much. That's the reason why we have Google and Apple. That's how important that shakeup was, because Internet Explorer killed Netscape. Now I'm like, what? Here's the deal. That's the whole thing. Back in the day, things used to come in CDs, and operating system like Windows was starting to gain market share. Slowly over time, it became a very huge deal. Now, at that time, in place, Microsoft had a package, basically a different software package that you can buy for pay money to get this package. Was Internet Explorer. Internet was a new thing, so browser was not defaulted, and there was another company, Netscape Communicator, and this was a genuinely good, basically competitor, and people had to choose. It's like, hey, do you want IE or do you want this? Both were growing, awesome, but Microsoft decided, we are selling a lot of basically OS. What if we started to bundle this puppy, i.e. with our OS, so people don't even have to buy this puppy? And this is what we call very anti-competitive behavior, because if you have a big bank balance, you can sell a product that is much lower than the cost, meaning if you are costing X, you can sell it X minus 20%. You're like, wasn't that cost you lost? Yeah, but you have deep enough pocket, you can endure that loss. All you have to do is endure it long enough that your competitor dies out, and then voila, then you increase the price, recover everything, and nobody can challenge you because there is no competition. This is what we call anti-competitive behavior. So that's why like price fixing is such a bad deal. That's why like selling things below cost is almost illegal in almost every wise country. They're like, dude, we get it. Like for example, any apps can be like, hey, we are giving a service and the service is too cheap. If you have a government that is wise enough, they're like, dude, apply brakes here, because what they are doing is killing all the competition and then jumping as like with price hikes. At that point in time, you will not have any competition. So this was how Microsoft started to do this. So making Internet Explorer bundle with the app OS, that was like a very strong breach of basically two teams, where they're like, hey, they're helping with each other. And US Department of Justice looked into it in 1998 case. This is from like actual court case. Like it was a bigger deal in that time. So they found MS was using OS monopoly. They were becoming a very strong monopoly in the operating system market to become monopoly in basically apps market also, meaning they could have become like, if they were not applied, like serious breaks were applied, they could have slowly become a company where it's like, oh, there is no Adobe, there is no Autodesk, nothing, everything would be Microsoft. They were going there, like that's what they were going. And that's why Department of Justice was like, apply breaks here. And they found out like flat out, this is not acceptable. Like they killed a competitor and they realized very early on, it's like, this is not good. So Bill Gates' reputation took a very bad hit at that time, because you have to understand why the heck people salivate so much over Steve Jobs. His deal, same thing was happening for him also. Everybody was like, whoa, Bill Gates, the genius, the billionaire and all that jazz. Everything was the same, exactly like he was worshipped exactly as Steve Jobs. But because of this scandal, quote unquote, that happened in 1998, people realized that he's a ruthless businessman. And given the fact that he successfully killed it, and they were trying to kill other companies also before they even get out of the ground, that tanked his reputation. How badly it tanked its reputation? This is a video conference when Apple was like almost done, dead. So Steve Jobs literally directly phoned this guy. It's like, bro, I need money. It's like, and here's the deal. This is what the, what do you say? Offer that was made is like, bro, it's much better for you to have a broken competitor than to have no competitor. Meaning it's best business interest that you save our company, because here's the deal, if you save us, we're gonna survive. But here's the deal, we're not gonna become magical company that have magical value. We're not gonna displace you. But if we are not there, if let's say Apple is gone from the market, like flat out, they were that bad at that point in time. If Apple is gone, all the legislation like Department of Justice will fire another missile up your ass. So it's much better to invest money on us as an insurance policy. And he did that. And people say that this is the time where his perception changed, because he had a video call, like this is a real world video call, and people booed him. And this was like first time he was like, he felt the hatred of public. It's like, and again, I do not know how true it is, but again, this is the time where he gave up. It's like Belinda Gates Foundation was like, foundation was laid down at that time. So, but be mindful, this is a very good thing. And that's the sole reason we have Apple. That's the sole reason, like, why do you even think Google Chrome exists? If this behavior was allowed to persist, we would have nothing. Microsoft would be a closed garden and there would not be any other company, including Apple also. So Department of Justice did amazingly good job, and this was like mind-boggling. Be mindful, there was a history of my US government where they have handled oil oligarchies, they have handled like the sort of tech oligarchy before it became such a big deal. So it was very good. Unfortunately, right now they have lost their balls, because this thing should have happened with Google, this thing should have happened with Facebook, this thing should have happened with Amazon before they become such a large company that they are just absorbing competition. It's like Instagram, good tool, I'll buy it. WhatsApp, good tool, I'll buy it. So that makes them way too powerful. They makes them so powerful that flat out at this point in time, Department of Justice, even if they want to file a suit, even if they want to do anything, they can't really do it. Like how good they were at snapping this puppy in half, they could not do that with Google or anything, because again, they have so much power. They are like, oh, they will go to senators and talk to her, like politely. It's like, bro, do you understand that if I don't like it, if there was some miscommunication, they will take polite language that even if somebody is recording it, they can't use it in court. Polite language. It's like, something bad happens to Amazon, you're gonna lose like, few 100,000 jobs, and those people will come for your head. So do understand that. make sure this bill does not get passed. So that's why Department of Justice have lost their balls, and they had to act before Amazon, Google, Facebook. They became this behemoth that cannot be stopped. Exactly how they did with Microsoft, but they lost their balls. So there has been a history of past, and we can see that, like, why the heck there is no new company? Why the heck every other company that comes up is only absorbed by the, like, large companies? That's the same reason. That monopoly break that used to be there, that break has failed. It's sad. I respect this sort of like ballsy judiciary system. It's like, no, bro, it does not matter whether you are the richest person. We'll break you. So this was a past, and it's very important for all of us. So Google, the probe was done in Google. So what is Google doing? Well, you have to understand, Google, when they started, there was a lot of competition. For example, there was Symbian OS that was used in all other brands. For example, Sony Ericsson or basically Nokia. So there were a lot of alternatives. So what Google was doing at that time now is like, hey, this is our open source operating system, and we're going to support it, and you can use it, and we're going to give you free reign, because they knew for a fact, like, if they become too close walled garden, Symbian OS will take over. So what they did, took it for years. They're like, okay, get the hardware. Now once they have the monopoly in the Play Store, they knew for a fact that there is no other alternative. Then they started to tighten their grips. It's like, okay, now allow me to milk money. So they had the loss part. Now they were like, let's allow me to print some money. And they slowly started to do that. At this point in time, they are starting to control manufacturers. Like, even a giant manufacturer like Samsung has to listen to Google. Back in the days, like, sir, we are here to serve you. Now it's like, bro, I tell you to put Photos app rather than your own gallery app, you put the goddamn Photos app, or you flat out do not get Android. And again, they will do it openly, legally and all that, but again, they will be like, suggestion will incentivize you to not install your own app. So flat out, brick by brick, they are starting to control manufacturers. And Play Store, slowly, be mindful, day one, there was a lot of alternatives, lot of competition. There were like one Play Store, if I remember very early on, I used to read in magazine, that's how long ago it was. Like, there was an app store, that sole job of that app store was like only free apps. There was only free apps on that. So a lot of things were there. Like, Amazon also tried to make an app store. A lot of companies tried it, a lot of them. But over time, slowly, brick by brick, like changing one line in a contract, brick by brick, changing 2 lines in a contract, changing 5 lines in a contract. They're like now dealing with exclusivity dealing, brick by brick, day by day. Once they got the monopoly, they are like, okay, bye-bye all competitors. Like, if you sell it there, you can't sell it here. And you can notice that, like, you can use Samsung's own iOS department, but you will not find many apps. Why? Many apps have contract clause that says you can only be in one app store. So slowly, over time, it was not a voila. It was like brick by brick, day by day. I'll encourage you. Like, if other companies were running on, let's say, 10% commission, Google was like, hey, 5% commission. How about that? People came in, and then they took the loss. Once the competitor dies out, then it's like, okay, 35% now. Where else you gonna go? So over time, this was a very slow, methodic, mathematical calculation. It was done that. And over time, they learned from the basically telemetry data, and they built in-house apps, meaning back in the days, they only had few apps like Gmail and all that jazz. Now they have so many, like Google Search, Maps, Music, Playbooks, and Google Music and all that, movie also. So over time, they became the very thing they were saying that they were not going to become. Basically, they became the Apple's closed wall garden. Over time, it was a very slow, very methodic process, but they did become that. And the final nail in the coffin was that they started to make their own handset. For example, right now, the Photos app's best functions, like AI-based image modification, that can only be done in Pixel. You cannot do that in Samsung. Why? It's a proprietary system, lockdown. So that's what I'm saying. Even though both are Android, you can only get maximum Android functions in this puppy. This is what we call anti-competitive. And again, they were not printing money when Mark 1, Mark 2 was released, but because they had such a deep pocket, they were selling it at a loss, and they kept selling it at a loss. They kept selling it at a loss. Slowly over time, they started to make it good. So that's how Google went from, oh, I am just a humble servant of you, to like, bro, I'm the daddy. So OEMs can't even compete with that. Like, the daddy Google is too huge now, flat out. Slowly, over time, brick by brick. Very clever. So CCI, basically Competition Commission of India, and I really like the slogan, fair competition for greater good. I like that. That's wise lines. So they realized like flat out Android cannot go on, because be mindful, Android is 98% in India, so it has to be controlled very well. Otherwise, like we'll have another East India company. So they were like very mindful about it. So Android has to change, and Google were like they went to Supreme Court. And again, this is why it matters. They cannot do this in what you call China and all that. China is like, bro, I say it, the law. Again, at least they have some chance, some fighting chances and all that jazz. So they went to Supreme Court. Exactly the same thing would have happened in European Union, same thing had happened in USA. They did that, but Supreme Court said like it's unethical what you're doing, so the ruling will stand. Now, I'm not going to talk about the fine they implemented, because that fine is chump change. That's like, that fine is so low for Google. That's like the CEO can literally go in his pocket. It's like, bam, directly do that to the judge. And it's like, bro, it won't even show up in my budget sheet. Like, that's how little that money is. Like, again, they're talking in Indian rupees. So it does sound huge. It's like 1,000 crores. It's like, bro, that's barely 200 millions. It's like barely. It's like, bro, it does not even register. Like in our giant data sheet, is like somewhere after decimal is going to change. It's a very little amount. So I'm not going to talk about that money. But be mindful, the fact that they are forcing it's like, no, you have to change. That's the good part here. So Android cannot come as a package deal, meaning if a manufacturer, let's say Indian manufacturer like Micromax or whatever other company that comes up in the future, they're like, hey, Google, we want your OS. Google cannot be like, okay, you'll get the OS, but everything else with it, no, sir, I only want your OS. I'll design everything else, or I'll use Indian alternatives rather than using your baked in. And Google have to allow that. Android has to come as a package, OS and apps, and all the apps has to be uninstallable. So they cannot just package in like, let's say, YouTube, Maps, GPay. GPay specifically matters for India, because be mindful, it's not that useful in India. UPI is the core background, and Google Pay was literally fighting. It's like, no, we're not going to use this system. You have to use our systems. Like, India was like, bro, did you forget how much money we bring for you? Just like, calm down. Calm down. And then Google Play is the only one. Like UPI also has a tag data set where you can set metadata. You can write some comments. I use that in my live streams. Rarely get any message from GPay. Every other app, be it Paytm, be it other banking apps, all banks have that. All of them are able to send me a message through UPI. They can't send it through GPay. So if a company manufacturers like Samsung is like, bro, people have bad experience with GPay, let's just not give it that. Google cannot force it there. So that's the whole point. You cannot force any app. Apps have to be a chosen app. Default search engine also has to become a user choice. Now, does that matter at this point in time? Mildly so, because here's the deal. You can change it to DuckDuckGo. You can change it to Bing. Hopefully, in future, Bing's integration with ChatGPT will make it truly good. But I have low hopes anytime soon. It should happen, but I do expect it to take 1 to 2 years before it's like, no, it's a really good alternative. So all that has to be done. Another, payment have to have multiple gateway, and this is the critical aspect. Meaning, if some company, let's say Indian startups, there are like a lot of software company, they are like, hey, we want to make the apps, but if Google charges us, let's say 35% of our commission, we cannot make it cost competitive enough. So there could be like, hey, let's say Indian Play Store becomes a thing, and they're like, hey, we only have 5% commission, or it's like almost free. They have to allow that, and instead of like GPay to act as the primary means of transferring money, they have to allow other options also. And I'm like, through full out from, basically they should be able to buy a paid app, premium app, without ever paying a single cent to Google. Now be mindful, these things have to be sorted out. The mathematical data, the law data and all that just have to be sorted out, but that has to happen there. Basically multiple gateway, meaning ideally it will be UPI, because it works amazingly well in India. So that will be the payment gateway. So rather than giving large cut, fixed cut to Google Pay, if some other company comes and hey, for because we're gonna give a curated app store, we only have few apps, we do not need server costs, so like, hey, only 5% cut, people can choose that. So that has to be the third. And third-party app store cannot be blocked. Now, even though technically it's allowed, even though almost all manufacturers have their own app store, be it Chinese manufacturer, specifically Samsung, they have their own app store. And be mindful, Samsung's app store are really desirable because they allow you to install apps without Google account. So it's very good for many people. But again, not a lot of apps are available. So those cannot be blocked, where it's like, no, you cannot have Google Pay, like Google Pay services and security updates, all this will be blocked if you do not have Google Pay. So that behavior have to be undone. And Android's open source OS fork that Google releases, because be mindful, that was the contract that Google signed with all other manufacturers. That's why basically Android became such a big deal. It was like back in the day, they made like, sir, this is an open source project. Open source also comes with perpetual license. Not all the time, but it has to come with it. Otherwise, people will not trust it. And not to mention, there has to be some strong language that makes sure that Google itself cannot recant it. Only then other companies would trust it. Be mindful, we are talking about people who have a lot of lawyers. So it was done. But again, Google found a very clever way. It's like, the fork you can make, go ahead, but we cannot guarantee security of this. Like, I'm gonna motivate you to not do it. So those things have to be stopped. So Android open source fork have to be supported properly, and Play into Store integration has to done correctly. They cannot use it as a motivation where it's like, no, you have to use it. No, sir, we will support it. So, and Bharosa OS, Bharosa translates to meaning trust OS. Bharosa OS is a fork of basically Android open source fork, and that is made by IIT Madras, and IIT Madras is specifically focusing on closing down all the backdoors. There is no telemetry data that goes to Google, flat out. It's 100% telemetry locked, meaning there is no backdoor, there is no continuous data stream. Again, if successfully done, that will allow bigger battery life. Like, you will be shocked how much battery life you can have if you do not have any telemetry data going out. So this happened with CCI, Competition Commission of India, fair competition for greater good. So let's come to the fact part. Now, this is too little too late, because be mindful, Microsoft was controlled before they became too big. Basically Department of Justice realized the path they were going on, over time they will become something that we cannot be stopped. So fundamentally they tried to apply brakes before it got out of hand, and it worked. That's why we have Apple, that's why we have Google. But Google was not not broken before it's too late. Right now Google has reached what we call data god. At this point in time, no one competes with Google. No matter what you do, no much effort you do, how much money you pour. Give you an example. When Apple, a company that people have like whoa expectation, it's like whoa, they release Siri, everybody's like whoa. Google took just 1 year and they released their version that was tangibly better. How the heck did Google became so better with that? Simply because they had context awareness in their AI. How the heck they could deal with context awareness? Context awareness requires a lot of search data. What does Google have? It's a data god. It's like, bro, I know everything before you ask it. They had that, they integrated it, bit slapped Siri. Like, watch early years of like Siri versus Google Voice. It's hilarious. It's like DARPA technology means nothing. And to be fair, military never actually makes a voice AI technology. They used some parts of analysis algorithm, and not to mention military technology inherently means just one thing. It's reliable. Does not mean the best. It's just reliable. So if you had asked early days to Siri, it's like, hey Siri, who's the president? The Siri is going to give you an answer. Awesome. Ask Google, Google is going to give you an answer. Here's the moment you ask the second question, it's like, hey, how tall is he? Google cannot give you the answer. Google will give you the answer. Siri was like, how tall is who? Siri could not recant the last sentence. Now be mindful, there is a limitation. You cannot have a conversation with Android, because again, it will take too much CPU power on their end to store all that data. So there is like only 2-3 conversations it can store, but tangibly much better than Siri. So how the heck that happened? Again, data god. They're like, bro, I know you better than you know yourself. So that's a very big thing. Flat out, you can't compete. Like Apple tried that. Apple tried with Maps and they got bitch slapped. Like, how the heck that happened? Because again, Android is sold so much that it collects all the telemetry data and figures out where the person is. Is the person in car? Is the person moving? How fast he is moving? What is the average speed? What's supposed to be the average speed of that road? All that data combined, now it tells you the map detail. Now it tells you where is the traffic jam. Now it tells you where to take a turn, where not to take a turn. This sort of data cannot be done with a competitor, no matter how big you are. You need to be data god status. Google is there. And humans like things that just work. Meaning, I pull out my phone, I do things, and I put back from my bag. That's what we want. Like, that's why Apple became successfully able to, destroy the world. Because again, inherently they made a product, even though how fragile, how garbage it product is, they're like, it just works. Like, the product is so bad that it will self-destruct after 18 months. Like, basically, the moment the warranty is over, the iPod will self-destruct. People still bought it. Why? It just works. And it has a sex symbol to it. So fundamentally, that things is a weakness in human psychology. Meaning, back in the days, Androids were far less polished. But again, under no circumstance, even back in those days, as in like very first iPhone kind of days, Google always had far more horsepower. You can do far more things. You can copy paste. You can change ringtones. Yeah, ringtone took time to change in iPhone. But why the heck people always chose iPhone? It's like, it just works. So people are willing to sell their soul and their country if it just works. So Google have reached that point. Google built the monopoly, and that allows them to do that, where they're like, dude, we know. For example, these are the app ecosystem that Google has. Like, it's huge. For example, at this point in time, I'm talking to an individual. I'm like, bro, let's meet up on Google Meet. Okay, awesome. What time? Awesome. The moment we decide a time, the Gmail will be synced up with the Meet. Meet will be synced up with the calendar. All three apps are Google its own, and it will be smooth. So we just want that things that work, and that's how you get things that work. The closed wall garden, where everything is done under one roof, you control it very well. So people are willing to sell it. So like, there are other companies like Fairphone that truly wants to make a true good OS, but nobody buys it. That's the same thing. It's too little, too late, practically speaking. Others simply cannot match that polish. No matter what you try, you simply can't match it. And there is no alternative to Maps, Gmail, YouTube. All other services are well too integrated. Like, to try to break this puppy up, yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. It simply will not work. And fundamentally, this idea, I like this idea that government is trying to approach it. But flat out, government should never make a product. It never works out. No matter what you do, it just does not work. Like, it's a law of nature that government cannot make a product. No government. It's not like, oh, Indian government. No government can make it. Flat out, the end. Like, first of a product, I get it, maximum chances, maybe, but as a polished experience, no. And how the heck they are expecting, like, unless they pour every single individual in IIT Madras, which is a bigger place. I mean, again, the students are there to study and learn and all that jazz. No, they are not there to work as a labor in a freaking this OS. And not to mention, I'll trust a private company, because if private company breaks me, I go to government, and governments break the private company. If government leaches data out of me, what can I do? Who the hell I'm going to go to? So for that reason, I do not trust this Bharat OS system. I like the approach, I like the mindset, but if it was done by some other company that government was promoting, again, that will give me some press X for doubt, but at least there were some chances, there were some things that you can look into. But it's like right now China is giving you Chinese OS. It's like, bro, how badly do you want to destroy your own citizens? So that's the fact. Like, I love the essence of the deal, the approach that they are trying to take, but it's too little too late. Because be mindful, everything that the apps will do can be done. Already can be done. There are already phones that have truly no backdoors, but nobody wants to use it because, again, without map, without having that telemetry data, map does not work the way you expect it to. And again, it needs that data. Then only it can give you that smooth. It just works. So that's the fact about it. I'm a bit sad about it. Happy that Indian government finally decided, dude, we are the largest market, open market, unsaturated market that you want to come in. However, you do not mess up with our customers. So I'm happy with that, but too little too late. It should have been done in 2010s. Then it would have had a very huge impact. But doing that now, too little too late. So this was my presentation on basically Google versus India. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free. And as always, thanks for watching.